Now that Auburn's quarterback room is filled, it's significantly better than it was a year ago.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We're dapping it up with the Darrell Dapprich, Montgomery radio legend, hanging out with us on this Friday edition of the show. We're going to talk about some Auburn basketball hoops chatter that's coming up, as well as the future of the quarterback room now that we know who Auburn's going to have going into this offseason and into the great year that is 2025. But Darrell, right now, with the addition of Tanner Bailey, so now that Auburn has their full quarterback room of scholarship quarterbacks, we assume this is it. Jackson Arnold, Ashton Daniels, Deuce Knight, Tanner Bailey. I think when you look pound for pound, 1-1, 2-2, 3-3, 4-4, this room better than it was a year ago.
Absolutely. And I would make the argument that Tanner Bailey was on par, comparable to what Hank Brown was and Walker White for the amount of snaps. Now, I get Hank Brown played a whole game against New Mexico and played a quarter or a half against Arkansas. But do we really feel like a kid like Tanner Bailey, who was a 4-star and played at a Power 4 school in South Carolina, couldn't have come in against New Mexico and put up similar numbers? I think he could.
Wow.
And I think he was more highly rated than Hank Brown was coming out of high school. So I would say maybe not better, but comparable in the same ballpark. And I would find it very difficult to go across the league and find a guy that's your fourth string, that's comparable to him.
I think that's the thing that's important. And when we talk about Tanner Bailey, it's under the context of he's the fourth quarterback in this room, like true break glass in case of emergency type player. So 100%. But I just think when you stack them up 1 through 4, I would take Jackson Arnold over Peyton Thorne from a year ago. And a true backup role, hey, win me one game. I think Ashton Daniels is safer than Hank Brown. I think when you look at the third option, that is Deuce Knight. I think Deuce Knight over Walker White, I think it makes sense. I think most people would agree with that. And then when you talk about Tanner Bailey or Holden Geriner, I truly don't know, but my gut is like I'm okay with taking the Tanner Bailey side of this if the fourth spot even really actually matters.
There's so much symmetry in this because let's go the Thorne Arnold thing.
Which is the most important one.
The most important thing. I think Jackson Arnold already has stats that you could put on paper, thankfully, for a year and a bowl game. I think he's got a higher ceiling. Yeah. I think he's got better attributes. He's more toolsy than Peyton Thorne. Who knows about decision-making? Who knows about, thinking quick, throwing into windows, right reads, check downs? We'll see. That's hard to tell. Peyton Thorne was a fifth-year senior, so I think Arnold can get there and surpass because he's younger. But the backup role is the one that just kills me. I mean, first of all, Ashton Daniels is more athletic and has more tools than Hank Brown does. I love Hank Brown. I get it.
Sure.
Maybe goat, all that stuff. But you look at Ashton Daniels' legs, you look at what he's already done on the ground, what he's done through the air. Look at the stats. He was a 2-year starter at Stanford. Hank Brown was a game and a half starter at Auburn. Ashton Daniels has more significant and better stats, and I think he's got more tools. He can do things with his legs that no one in that quarterback room right now, maybe Jackson Arnold, but I still think Ashton Daniels is a more dynamic runner than Jackson Arnold, period. Okay, so look what he did at Stanford. Look at the total touchdown contribution he made. You don't get that typically in a backup, and Auburn has that. So absolutely, I think he's an upgrade over Hank Brown as a backup. Your argument about 3 is all about potential. Sure. Walker White, Deuce Knight, it's two sides of the same cord. One was a 5-star, one was a 4-star. Both are being judged on potential, ceiling, and come in hyped. Who do you think will end up being the better quarterback? Who's more ballyhooed? Who's more hyped? Obviously, I think Deuce Knight. I think Deuce Knight's more toolsy.
Yeah, I think most people would say that for sure. And when you look at the pecking order and like where each guy is, it's not in a vacuum, right? Like you talk about Hank versus Ashton Daniels is like, okay, which is the better QB2? to me, it's like we're not asking who the better quarterback is. We're asking who's the better backup quarterback, because that's what the role is in this quarterback room.
I'd say both. I'd say both, though. That's for me.
Yeah, maybe so.
Maybe disagree. So. I say he's the better quarterback and the better backup quarterback.
And I think you would too. I just want to make sure we're communicating the same thing here. But yeah, I like Ashton Daniels as a QB2 in this room a ton. I think Auburn really handled that.
Let me throw you out a scenario here that's hypothetical that'll tie this in.
Okay.
Let's say during the year last year, Peyton Thorne, when he had his struggles and people were calling for him to get pulled and say, gosh, we need to do something, change the pace, get him out of there. Who would you have rather have gone in and trotted out there last year in the orange and blue? Ashton Daniels or Hank Brown?
Ashton.
And it's going to speak volumes.
Well, let me ask you this.
What happens at Iowa with this Gronkowski kid too? That'll tell
that is going to be
fascinating.
Yep. That is going to be fascinating. Mm-hmm. Rooting for Hank, just full transparency. But yeah, that's going to be fascinating. Let me ask you this then. It's a it's a game where Auburn's up by 3 or 4 scores. Hopefully it's a conference game, but there's going to be an opportunity where the backups come in. If you're Hugh Freeze this year, how do you balance that as far as giving reps to Ashton, which doesn't really matter?
Doesn't help you in the future. Doesn't help you.
Right. But he's the backup quarterback right now, we assume. Or do you give all of those or more of those snaps to Deuce Knight? I think that's going to be interesting.
It's a great question. And I would say let scenario dictate that. If you're in a point in the season or a game where you need short-term gratification, immediate gratification, and you got to go to a backup, you go to Daniels. If you're looking at it and it's something that the game's in hand and you're looking at long-term picture, you go to Deuce Knight. Ashton Daniels doesn't do anything for you long-term. He might do something for you in the immediate moment if you need it, a spark.
But the immediate moment, I don't think that's necessarily what I was asking. Like the immediate moment is like an injury or
a struggle. What if someone struggles for 3 quarters and the team's not moving the ball?
But if you're talking about like garbage time, give the backups reps.
You got to go Deuce Knight.
Which I think is interesting because that's not typical of, the QB2 situation. But that's such a cool opportunity that Auburn has with your QB2 being this veteran guy who's just coming in just to be QB2.
You got to look development. You got to look development in this scenario. And I think Ashton Daniels is who he is, which is fine, which is great, which is a higher floor than an Auburn backup's had in a while. But if you're looking long-term, you got to look, who am I going to develop? And this has got to be based upon development. You've got to let Deuce Knight play.
Yep. I'm there with you. But which quarterback room between last year's or this year's room is better for the future? Because that's all we've heard, right? For the folks that, hate that Hugh Freeze let Walker leave and Hank leave. What about the future? I think this room's better for the future as well. That's next right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering and worrying about your taxes? Nobody likes tax season, Darrell. Nobody. But TurboTax. TurboTax knows that taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to help change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. Just head over to TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate and you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantee. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We all agree that Auburn's quarterback room for the upcoming season for 2025 is better than a year ago. If you don't, I'd love to hear the argument. But I have seen the argument against, well, what about the future? Hugh Freeze, you can't run out your young quarterbacks. What are you going to do for the future? This quarterback room is better for the future as well. You lose Ashton Daniels after this year. He's out of eligibility. That's part of the allure of him coming in to be QB2 just for a year. It helps get you there. I think people are forgetting that Jackson Arnold is young, which is why we kind of assume Walker left to begin with. Jackson Arnold, several years left of eligibility. Technically 3. Tanner Bailey, I believe, is a sophomore. His situation's a little squirrely, but I think he's a sophomore. And then Deuce Knight, obviously, is a true freshman. Like, I don't know how you can't look at Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight and not be excited about the future of this room.
Let's make some assumptions, first of all, that everybody comes back in 2026. No one jumps in the portal. No one leaves. No one gives up, whatever. Let's just make the assumption.
We just don't know.
Yeah, we just don't
know that.
But let's make the assumption that Jackson Arnold comes back, Deuce Knight comes back, and Tanner Bailey comes back.
Okay.
Well, you've got 3 of your 4 quarterbacks that we already said was a better quarterback room in 25 over 24 coming back next year or the following year. So absolutely, it's great for the future. And then, oh, by the way, you're going to probably go get a high-profile quarterback in the 2026 class as a recruit to bring in to round out the room.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Now, if you don't do that and you go get a transfer portal kid for 2026, let's say there's nobody there that you can't pull the trigger or get someone to commit, then you can always go get a kid that's a freshman or sophomore that was maybe stuck behind somebody that was a 4-star and put him in the room.
Yeah, because the need won't be as dire. Assuming everyone comes back, I don't think you need. You want a quarterback in every class. I'm not dismissing that. But if you don't get a quarterback in the 2026 class, and you feel like you've got Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight, it's like that's okay. Like, let's really focus on a 2027 quarterback to make sure the timing works. But I'm never dismissing like you want a quarterback in every class. I cannot stress that enough. But if they don't get one in 2026, I still think you're okay.
For 2 reasons. One, which you just said, because of who you have coming back. You got 3 guys coming back that have experience and have been, kind of highly ranked. And then second of all, you don't panic if you don't get a recruit because you have the transfer portal as your fallback.
Yeah, which I think has been fine. And look, I know folks want high school quarterbacks to stay and never leave and stay here for 4 years and hope they get to start their last 2 years. Like, I get it. I totally get it. That's just not as normal as we all want it to be right now. And that's okay.
It's not.
And that's okay.
Either will be 2026 isn't going to look normal either. It's going to be very, very intriguing because unless Jackson Arnold has a Heisman campaign kind of year, that in 2026, even if he has a good year and leads Auburn to 9 wins, let's just say, in 2026, that quarterback job is still going to be a competition in the spring, which is amazing if you consider Jackson Arnold having a great year. What do? Well, you still got to give Deuce Knight a shot to win that job. That's going to be prickly. I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves. So if Jackson Arnold, let's just say, leads Auburn in 9 wins and throws for 3,000 yards and has a good interception to touchdown ratio, what do you do in 2026? Do you say we're still opening up the job for competition in the spring? My gosh, that'd be a slap in the face.
Yeah. I don't know how you handle that. And I think some of that depends on like what has, I don't want to say guarantees, but like assumptions and discussions with Deuce Knight been. You got to assume they talked to him before they brought in Jackson Arnold and everybody was aware of his eligibility situation. That was one of the things we heard about Deuce Knight pretty consistently from different places was, he's not expecting to come in right away. Like that's one of the things that was so appealing about him is his awareness to know that he's not ready to start as a true freshman.
But that
does he think he's going to start as a redshirt freshman / true sophomore? Like that it just kind of depends.
There you go.
You got to assume it changes some. You got to assume it changes some. And so I do think that's worth discussing for sure. And we'll see. We'll see what happens moving forward. Or do you give him enough reps this year? Do you give him a package? Do you give him, are you more willing to like put him in if you're up, 3 scores instead of 4 in games that you should win handily? Like, I don't know. I think some of that stuff will matter.
I wrote that off automatically, and I'm starting to get texts and people reading things that people saying do not automatically assume Deuce Knight is going to be the backup in 2025, that it may be very difficult to keep him off the field, that we all assume that, but that what he does and his skill set is so perfect for this offense.
Sure.
And what he's looked like in practices and the games in the Alabama. I still have to see it to believe it. I don't believe what these people are telling me, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm very skeptical. I think it's Jackson Arnold. I think it's Ashton Daniels if something happens to Jackson Arnold. But I do believe Deuce Knight's going to get in games with certain packages, and it's not going to be garbage time. I do believe that.
Well, and I do think that goes back to like the QB2 situation. Like Deuce Knight for 2025 is he's the second most important quarterback in that room to Jackson Arnold for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think him getting more reps in the spring with Ashton not being here is super crucial.
It's going to be
super important.
Yep.
100%. And you're going to know. And if you're Deuce, you're going to know. Like you're going to have the awareness. And
I'm going to tell you what's going to happen.
Okay.
Mark it down. You got a little pen. You can mark it down. He is going to show out in A-Day, and it's going to create all this chatter. Oh, my gosh. Why did we get – you're right. Why did we get Jackson Arnold? Deuce Knight can do the job. Deuce Knight's the man. You watch. You watch what happens when he shows out in A-Day. The buzz and the chatter is going to start.
Well, and Deuce can win the backup job.
Yeah.
He can win it. He can absolutely beat out Ashton Daniels for QB2. You still want Ashton Daniels in the room. You still want him at practice. You still want him in the locker room. You still want him in team meetings and film review. You want him in all of it. But when it comes down to like who wins that QB2 job, Deuce can absolutely win it. In fact, I would argue that's the best case scenario for Auburn is for Deuce to win the backup quarterback job.
You got 3 quarterbacks that are going to be playing in the spring, and he's going to get a lot of snaps. And when he starts doing Deuce Knight things, people are going to go, wow. And especially if he look on the odd chance that he looks even a little bit better than Jackson Arnold, get ready, buckle up. We'll have so much fodder and material for shows for months to come because people will be just screaming and calling for him to start based upon an A-Day performance. And it's going to happen. He's going to show flashes. It's the perfect scenario and setting for him to do well. And I suspect he'll show some things in the A-Day game.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Auburn basketball making a case to be the number 1 team in the country. And if they beat South Carolina tomorrow, they're probably there. What do they need to do? That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's number 1 sports book. Right now, new customers on FanDuel, you can bet $5. You get $200 in bonus bets, which is insane, incredible. Tonight, we get more college football playoff action, Ohio State and Texas. Darrell, Ohio State, a 5.5-point favorite. Where's your gut on this one?
I'd take that all day long.
Yeah. You're saying Ohio State covers?
Yep, I do.
Yeah, I think so too. Once again, new customers can bet $5. You get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. Make this playoff season more over at FanDuel. Auburn basketball taking on South Carolina in Columbia at noon Central on Saturday. The Auburn Tigers survived against Texas. Hats off to Texas. What a strong finish for them. I don't fully know the ratio of it being Auburn collapsing and Texas just putting together a really strong push late. It's definitely a combination of both. I think, and you hinted at this on the reaction show that we did earlier this week, Darrell, I think the way this team responds is going to be very telling, and I'm expecting them to play as close as they can to a full 40 minutes, and I think this is bad news for South Carolina.
I think if Auburn would not have finished out that Texas game the way they did, there would have been a very distinct possibility they could have went into South Carolina feeling very good about themselves at a higher level, overlooking South Carolina a little bit, maybe not having South Carolina having their full attention. I think with the way that game finished and Auburn, being close late, that got them focused and locked back in. South Carolina's not going to sneak up on them, and they're not going to take them lightly, and they're not going to take them for granted and believe their press clippings. They're going to go, look what we did down the stretch and the mistakes we made and how we've got to clean that up and this and that, X and Y. And that'll get them, I think, back recalibrated to do what they need to do against South Carolina. Best case scenario, worst case scenario for South Carolina.
Yeah, and South Carolina's in a tough spot right now. They're already kind of seen as like a bottom 3 team in the conference right now. They beat Clemson earlier in the year in overtime, which is their signature win. But they started conference play at Mississippi State, and they played Bama, and now obviously they're playing Auburn on Saturday. That is a brutal start of conference play. And, they played Alabama, a day later than Auburn played their last game. I think that stuff matters. This all looks good for Auburn. The only thing that gives you pause is it's in Columbia, and it's hard to win on the road in this league.
Yeah, regardless of who you're playing, it is difficult to win on the road. And Kentucky found that out against Georgia, but I feel like Georgia's a better basketball team than South Carolina. I think South Carolina is going to struggle to score, and I think Auburn defensively will make it complete. The way Auburn let Texas get 52 points in the second half, that stings, that burns with them. They're going to come out, in my opinion, and play really, really high-level, lockdown, in-your-grill defense because they have a bad taste in their mouth the way the second half against Texas. That's bad news for South Carolina, too, who already struggles to score a little bit. Alabama shot the ball well against South Carolina. Jeff Goodman put a tweet out saying that when Alabama shoots the basketball this well, no one in the country beats them. No one. Well, I get that, but I went back and looked at the stats, and it wasn't anything. It was 54% from the field and 40% from the three-point line. That's not earth-shattering. It's good, but it's not. Sure. So Auburn should be able to replicate that. Auburn is shooting threes right now as good as anybody in the country, and I would have never thought that when the season started. I thought they were going to be a front court-based team. Denver, Pettiford, Chad Baker-Mazara, and now, oh, by the way, Miles Kelly, who on the road is a demon. He's such a better basketball player on the road. They're shooting threes. If South Carolina gave up that kind of perimeter shooting to Alabama, I think it'll bode well for Auburn, who also could go inside with Broome if they want to extend. And maybe South Carolina will. Maybe South Carolina will see Auburn's shooting percentage and say, hey, we're gonna come out on them. We're not going to zone them, and we'll see.
I mean, it's you can't do both. Like you either got to guard the perimeter, and
and there's no matchup zone you can throw because who are you going to shadow? Denver, Chad, Miles? You can't clone people. That's what makes this team so 6 players averaging double figures. Man, if you're a coach, you can't draw that up. That is your dream to have 6 players in double figures and the National Player of the Year. Oh, by the way, amongst those 6 players, I think Auburn will come out and shoot it really well. Saturday, I think they'll do a really good job limiting South Carolina. Auburn did a good job. Thankfully, got it turned around on the offensive glass against Texas. So what I felt like was a Achilles heel for them. Remember, one of the things we talked about they needed to clean up was getting on the offensive glass a little bit better. They did that against Texas. They out-rebounded Texas plus 10. Get to the line a little more. Probably will against South Carolina. Get to the line a little bit more. And they're doing better on the turnovers. They're doing some things that they're improving over last year. So I think it's going to be I feel really good about this game. I think Auburn bounces back, and I think they play against South Carolina and win comfortably.
Yeah, at the time of us recording this, there's no line out yet, but I imagine it'll be
Can I guess? I want to guess what it is. I love playing this game. I am going to say, because it's in Columbia, 16.
I was going to say 18 and a half. Yeah, we're in the same ballpark. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a close basketball game. We'll see. And we will react to all the action. Be sure you're subscribed, and we'll go live right after the game. And of course, it'll be posted on audio right as soon as we're done with the live. So be sure to check that out. We'd love to have you. Blown away by.
What time's that tip, by the way?
It's at noon.
Hey, man, hallelujah, praise Jesus.
Yeah.
We get a game that we can do lights outside, right? It's daytime. I love it.
Oh, yeah. There will be a baby shower downstairs, so I will be up here kind of hiding from all of that action tomorrow.
That could be interesting. How could we incorporate an Auburn boat racing with a baby shower theme? That could be fun.
Yeah. They can be totally separate as well. We can just ignore that it's happening.
No, I'm thinking I'm thinking Auburn showering a bunch of threes on South Carolina.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. In honor of baby Blackerby number 3. Who knows? Who knows? Darrell, how can
awesome.
people check out everything you've got going on?
Follow me on X, DAP6410, Instagram, Darrell Dapp. Wednesdays, Fridays with you. Sunday nights, I love talking about this, on the Barn.
Yeah.
Charlie 5, Kyle puts out we do a live show, me, you, and him. Sometimes Taylor jumps on. It's a lot of fun. And the topics are just kind of, all over the place. And we really have a good time, all three of us or four of us, whatever the combination is together.
Yep, absolutely. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.